Hi everyone, it's Kelly. I am back again with a card making process video. Today I will be making a card based off of this sketch from Atlantic Heart Sketch Challenge. I'm going to be creating a top folding card, so I'm going to take an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper and trim it to 4.25 by 11, and then make a score mark at 5.5 to create that top folding card base. Once that is done, I'm going to set that aside and I'm going to create a panel for the front of my card. I had originally intended, which you will see later in this video, to use gelatos with some water to create a watercolorish background. So I'm starting with watercolor paper and I'm going to trim that panel just slightly smaller than my card base. It is trimmed at 4 by 5.25. Now, as you saw in the sketch, there is a grid design to this card. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this grid paper and line some washi up into a T shape. And rather than using pattern paper, I'm going to use mixed media to create my grid pattern. I'm just going to eyeball the washi, and then I will come in with my T-square ruler just to make sure that it is fairly straight. Once I have the washi down, I'm going to bring in a couple different stencils. I knew I wanted to do a polka dot pattern, but I wasn't sure how wide or how large I wanted the polka dots to be. So first I'm bringing in a Heidi Swapp stencil to see if I like that. And then I grab this Tim Holtz Distressed polka dot stencil, and I really like the size of the polka dot, so I'm going to stick with that one. I like to secure my stencil, so I'm also adding some washi to the sides of the stencil. And then I will come in along the top of the stencil also, just so I know that I get the mixed media right where I want it. I'm using glass bead glitter gel for my mixed media product, and I'm just applying it directly onto that panel using a palette knife. I want the coverage to be fairly consistent, so I'm going to go over it a few times just to make sure it's smooth. Okay, so I've removed the washi tape, and it's a little difficult to see from this angle because the glass bead glitter gel is iridescent, and at this point it's still wet, so it's difficult to see on that white cardstock. I know for my center focal image I want to use circles, so I'm going to be using a couple different size dies from Big Picture classes. First I'm going to cut a smaller circle out on a piece of fabric. I'm going to cut a slightly larger circle using the same set of dies on Outdoor Denim cardstock, and I'm also going to cut an anchor using a Hero Arts die. Now in just a moment, I'm going to layer those pieces together, and once I get them all layered, I realize that the anchor kind of gets lost since the background cardstock is the same color as the anchor. So I'm going to start looking for a different paper to use. I pull in a glassine bag, but I don't really like how that looks, but I end up deciding to go with a sheet of vellum. So I'm going to cut another circle using the vellum. It's going to be the same size as that Outdoor Denim cardstock circle. I really like the softness of the vellum, and it's going to look great tucked behind that piece of fabric, and it really helps that anchor pop. Once I have that layered, this is where I thought I would bring in the gelatos. So my original thought with the gelatos was to make it almost have an ombre feel to it. I was going to have it be really dark right behind the circle and then kind of have it fade out as it goes towards the edges. But as we all know, mixed media is not predictable, and I wasn't really liking how it was looking. To me, it looked a little muddy. From here, it doesn't look too bad. I do like that it helped those dots kind of pop out from the background, but I decide after I play with it for a little while that it's just not working. The thing that I love so much about paper crafting is there really are no mistakes. I tried something new, I didn't like how it looked, so there's no harm in just starting over. For this time around, I'm going to use a slightly skinnier washi tape. I'm using the same technique again. I'm just going to lay that washi tape down and then come in with the same glass bead glitter gel and make that polka dot pattern on that panel. Now, because I knew I wasn't going to be doing any watercoloring or gelato work on this panel, I just used a white cardstock panel versus the watercolor paper that I used the first time I was making the card. So once I have that mixed media work done, I'm going to pull up the washi. I like this grid design a lot better. You're going to see that I'm going to bring the stencil back in a couple times. The second time that I made the card, the stencil work was a little further down on that panel, and I wasn't sure if I liked the gap between the mixed media and the top of the panel, but I end up, rather than risking it, I just leave it as it is. I'm going to add some stitching later, and that kind of helps fill in that void. Now, what I'm pulling off the card base there is I originally thought that I might do some silver foil on the card base, but I decide that I don't like it. So I'm going to pull that off. I do add the stitching, which does help just give it a little something extra. I use some silver thread for the stitching. I'm going to use liquid glass to adhere the anchor to the card. And then if you remember in the original sketch, there is a bow that is tied towards the base of the card, but rather than using a bow, that's where I'm going to place my sentiment. I'm going to use a banner die on a scrap piece of Outdoor Denim cardstock, and I'm going to white heat emboss my sentiment onto that die cut piece. I'm going to be using the Birthday Wish stamp set from Close to My Heart. This is a Hostess exclusive stamp set, and I'm going to stamp it in Versamark and then sprinkle some white embossing powder over the Outdoor Denim cardstock just to really make that sentiment pop off the cardstock. After the embossing is set, I am finished with this card. I'm going to leave you in just a moment with some still shots. I will link to Atlantic Hearts in the description below if you'd like to head over and enter your paper crafting project based off of sketch number 158. Please remember to subscribe if you liked this video. I should have another video up on Friday. And as always, thank you so much for watching.